Everyone, I'm Shweta Goswami. I'm a PhD candidate at Center for Philosophy, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. I will be reading my paper, so I may not be able to look into the camera frequently, so forgive me for that. I'm here today to share with you my understanding of abolition and my gaze into the future from where I am at present, a future which incorporates the alterity of my people, the Vimukta. I want to submit that in this presentation, I am not speaking for my people, but with them and with the ancestors whose struggle have made this possible, that I and many of my counterparts are in position to articulate the situation, make meaning, and have a voice and desire to shape the future. I will be explaining who are Vimukta people, what is their unique situation of derailment vis-a-vis society and the state, and why this unique situation screams for the ethical and radical possibilities of social change. I will then talk about Mahatma Jyotiba Phule, who offered a program of abolishing caste system by establishing foundation of new society Satyashodak, society of truth seeker, according to which truth is social, not metaphysical. I will relate a beautiful transformative movement. Movement. I tend to do that in pronunciation sometimes. That took place between Mahatma Jyotiba Phule and Dhundiba. Dhundiba came to Jyotiba Phule as an assassin, but they both ended up being counterparts, and that's the beauty I'll be talking about. I consider that movement as an example of abolition praxis. Through the example of this movement, I shall try to explain how the concept of reform is problematic. It is not only slowing down the possibilities of social change, but also maintaining the status quo. A very simple concept I shall share with you very quickly. I am using the term ethical in phenomenological sense, according to which we exist in tripartite connection with the other and the world. Imagine a triangle. The self, the other, and the world are constantly shaping each other. We exist in the world as embodied. It is through our body we relate and function in the world, and we are interrelated. Ursula K. Le Guin created a challenge for liberal theories of ethics in her story, The One Who Walked Away from Omelas. Omelas is a utopian city, prosperity and freedom of which rest on one child's misery, locked up in a windowless basement of one of the houses in the city. The child did not always live in the windowless basement. They remember sunlight and the voice of their mother. They all know it is there. All of the people of Amilas. Some of them have come to see it. Others are content merely to know it is there. They all know that it has to be there. Some of them understand why and some do not. But they all understand that their happiness, the beauty of the city, the tenderness of their friendship, the health of their children, the wisdom of their scholars, the skill of their makers, even the abundance of their harvest and the kindly weathers of their skies depend wholly on the child's misery. If the child were brought up into the sunlight, out of that wild place, if it were clean and fed and comforted, that would be a good thing indeed. But if it were done in that day and hour, all the prosperity and beauty and delight of Amilas would wither and be destroyed. Those are the terms. The situation of Vimukta in India is no different from the child who is living in the windowless basement of Omelas. We, as a society, is made to believe that we need to have prison, to imprison some of us in order for all of us to be safe. In literal sense, Vimukta means one who is free or set free. In India, the Vimukta communities were self-governed, nomadic, semi-nomadic tribes that did not accept the caste social system. Brahmanic law book Manusmriti treated those outside the caste system as sinful, low, and barbaric because they cannot speak Sanskrit and cannot perform sacrifices. It refers to them as Dasyus. This term can refer to a particular ethnic group or barbarians or simply bandits. All those tribes in this world which are excluded from the community of those born from the mouth, the arms, the thighs, and the feet of Brahma are called Dasyus, whether they speak the language of the Malacha, barbarians, or that of the Aryans. According to Manu, forest tribes were naturally drawn to forbidden occupations. They are seen as external threat to Brahmanic morals and way of life. Kautilya in Arthashastra calls them thorns, since they have not chosen to live like Aryans by accepting subjecthood within the kingdom. Arthashastra, I must mention, is the most important and ancient book on economics from India. Kautilya frequently mentions a neighbor to a Brahmanic kingdom, that is, Atavika or tribal chief. Kautilya assumes that his ideal kingdom has forests, where forest tribes live with their own social and military organizations. They are often viewed as bandits who can pose a severe threat and are not easily subjugated. Kautilya attempts to co-opt these marginal groups in various ways, including the incorporation into the army. Here, the marginal is not in the sense of deprivation, but that they live on the margin of the kingdom, outside the kingdom. The Mughals and the Britishers also adopted Kautilya's scheme of co-opting the Vimuktas and branded them as enemies. After the mutiny of 1857, the British notified the Vimukta tribe a criminal by enacting the Criminal Tribes Act 1871. According to this law, criminal propensities are there in the blood. The British government built the open prison settlements for the Vimuktas. The CTA gave more power to local government to declare any tribe, section, or class of people as criminal tribe, to order registration of members of the criminal tribe and taking of their fingerprints, to direct that every such registered member would report himself at fixed intervals to the police officer of the village, report to the police officer or the headman any change in the residence, and to restrict the movement of criminal tribe member to a particular area. There were reform schools also made, where the children were taken away from the families, so that, with this belief that the children wouldn't become criminal. In 1952, the Vimuktas were denotified after India got independence in 1947. However, the law still governs them with the Habitual Offenders Act 1952, according to which Vimuktas are no more to be defined as criminal by blood. You cannot change that. But to be defined as criminal by habit, discipline can change learned behavior. The practice of criminalization and surveillance continue till today. One must here again think about the idea of political prisoners, since the Indian National Congress organized a voluntary mass arrest movement, Jail Bharo Andolan, in the quest of freedom from the British rule, while ignoring and to some extent legitimizing the political criminalization and incarceration of Vimukta communities, which are over 220 in number. We need to question the binary of legitimate incarceration and illegitimate incarceration. Vimukta is free but treated as a threat. Vimukta in the latter sense, set free, is ambiguous. Thinking of the body as an expression of individual's relationship to the world, which world do Vimuktas belong to on being set free? The social world Vimukta ancestors inhabited does not exist. What exists are settlements for forced labor, police brutality, custodial death, custodial rape, and systemic erasure. There's a personal systemic erasure that is close to my heart, is that the city design does not have burial ground for Vimuktas. Traditionally, Vimuktas, the nomadic tribes, used to bury their ancestors and not cremate them. However, the city design does not acknowledge that. So, for me, my 4 generations, I'm sorry how to say that, the four generations of my ancestors have been cremated. Now, even if I desire and if I can afford a burial, I don't know which part of the land I should be buried in, because it's only the fifth generation, like in the back. How to say that? Okay, I should continue. Most academic work is either romanticizing or the carefree lifestyle of the Vimuktas, or it is constructing a narrative of insurmountable suffering and victimhood which needs evangelical saving. I would like to share the recent incidents of violence inflicted on Vimuktas, incidents which got national media coverage. In January 2017, over 20 policemen from 13 police stations raided two villages, Ramanda and Bhutia, in Dhar district, Madhya Pradesh. While the villagers are familiar with the raid, what came as a shock was that the police actually assaulted four women during the raid. According to the news report, though no one was arrested, cops seized several motorcycles and goods suspecting them to be stolen. Dhar SP Superintendent of Police Birendra Singh said the population of these villages is around 500 each, but at present there are 175 pending permanent warrants and 145 wanted criminals who have been charged. July 2018, in Dhule district of Maharashtra, over 200 people mobilized to lynch 5 individuals belonging to Nath Mente Shweta Goswami community. These 5 men apparently were on their way to register their presence at the local panchayat office and were carrying their identity card as well. The mob believed that the 5 men were kidnappers. January 2021, I'm quoting the New Indian Express. In the brazen case of mass kidnapping, a group of over 100 people belonging to Madhya Pradesh abducted 38 women and children of Kanjar tribe from Rajasthan on suspicion that Kanjar men were involved in stealing their bikes. I would encourage the audience to imagine social justice for Vimukta, considering the above mentioned cases where the Vimuktas are facing violence from the society and also the state. Envisioning Abolition from Jyotiba's legacy. This portion is a bit mellow and it becomes philosophical. In his book Sarvajanik Satadharma, Jyotiba evaluates truth in terms of social, which is collective well-being. He says, our Creator has graciously bestowed all human rights on all men and women, without any distinction. No particular man or a group, gang of men has any right to oppress any human being. Those who do not so oppress their fellow beings should be designated as the votaries or followers of the truth. The abolitionist Jyotiba Phule and his partner Savitribai Phule opened formal schools for the girls belonging to Shudra, Dalit and Vimukta communities in 1848. These communities were barred from learning by the Vedic injunctions. There are a lot of life-affirming abolition work that the couple did together to mention here. Jyotiba and his wife Savitri were gaining reputation among the oppressed masses. Masses were gaining new consciousness about their freedom through education. This threatened the ruling Brahmin class. In 1856, Brahmins hired an assassin belonging to Ramoshi community, a Vimukta community. His name was Dhundiba Rode. Dhundiba, along with his friend, went to kill Jyotiba. However, in this moment of attack and defense, a conversation took place between the assassins and Mahatma Jyotiba. We don't know what exactly the conversation was. It is a public knowledge that Jyotiba told the assassins about the work he is doing for the communities, and the assassin found that work important to such an extent that they chose to become Jyotiba's bodyguard. The transformative effect was such that Savitribai Rode, daughter-in-law of Dhundiba Rode, the assassin, joined Phule's mission and went on to organize 9 conferences on education between the year 1919 to 1925. I consider this movement as abolition praxis because both Mahatma Jyotiba and Dhundiba opened towards each other as equal. They allowed vulnerability, which is a human condition, to themselves and to each other. Either of them are not assuming undue worth. What happened in this moment is not a reform but transformation. It is not a one-way road. Reform assumes that the stakeholder involved does not have any active agency. In reform, individuals, communities are to be acted upon and not acted with. The concept of reform does not recognize the ambiguous nature of reciprocity within intersubjective existence. Simone de Beauvoir elucidates the concept of ambiguous reciprocity in her work. According to her, as conscious beings, others, and both subjects and objects, as conscious beings, others are both subjects and objects for an individual, and just as an individual is both a subject and object for herself, she is also a subject and object for others. In this ambiguous situation, Beauvoir places her concept of reciprocity. That is, one's condition is structured by relation of reciprocity with the world outside her, social and material, and one's own body. Because of the ambiguous reciprocity as meaning-giving subject, one's freedom is vulnerable to the influence of the interpersonal relations and the social institution that form part of one's situation. In talking about oppression, Beauvoir explains that the situation can be almost impossible to come out of because it is structured in such a way that they repress individuals' will to act. Human beings do not submit to natural calamities. They face calamities and rebuild what calamities destroy. But with fellow human beings, there is a constant engagement. According to Beauvoir, since we are social beings, we are always interdependent, and it is due to this interdependence that the oppression becomes a possibility. And since the interdependence is vital to our existence in the world, the oppression it leads to is always despicable. Beauvoir explains how the denial of freedom takes place. An individual's freedom requires a non-restricted future in order to fulfill itself. The other fellow human beings, given their interdependence, define an individual's future, since they too are moving towards freedom and creating concrete realities. There are discoveries, formations, and practice of culture, industrialization. This kind of constructive movement opens possibilities for human beings reciprocally. But if this reciprocity gets hindered by fellow human beings, if they simply deny participation to an individual or community, they deliberately cut them off from the future projects and possibilities and reduce an individual or a community to a thing. Now, I would like to take you back to Milas, and think if we should give a fruit to the undernourished child in a form of reform and feel good about ourselves, or shall we be willing to prepare ourselves to survive the chaos that may come if we bring the child out? Just as Octavia Butler has told us, we can prepare ourselves for the future, or we can be thrown into it. We can hold each other tightly, lovingly in faith, and bring the child out in the sun. Let them be with their families and ancestors. Thank you.